Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to introduce you to our panel from the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center with the topic Saxony's 50,000 Bitcoin sale and its market implications. I'm really happy to have a great panel here. I would like to first start with Svenja. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Philip. My name is Svenja Brinkmann. I'm a lawyer at Heuking. Our main focus is advising banks and also companies, financial companies, regarding banking supervision law, and we specifically focus on blockchain-based business models and everything to do with crypto. Prior to joining Heuking, I was also working as a technology provider in the blockchain space. And before that, I was a management consultant for banks and financial institutions in general. So next up is Andre.
Yes, thank you very much. Very warm welcome from my side as well. My name is Andre Dragos. I'm head of research at ETC Group. And ETC Group is the largest Bitcoin ETP provider in Europe. So we offer ETPs based on crypto assets, including Bitcoin, including Ethereum, and also a top 20 crypto asset basket. And as my title suggests, I analyze Bitcoin most of the time. And yeah, happy to be here. So next up is maybe Mark.
Okay, yeah. Hi, my name is Mark Friedrich. I'm a German best-selling author. My last book is about Bitcoin. It's right here, just about Bitcoin, no altcoins. And I'm also a financial consultant. I write a lot about Bitcoin. I also have a huge YouTube channel with over 450,000 subscribers. I'm very active on Twitter, or it's called X now. And yeah, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist since 2013, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And the next one is Salih.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, my name is Salih Altuntas. I work at Chainalysis. I'm director of investigations. Chainalysis is a crypto intelligence and solutions provider. And I look after countries in Central Europe, and we try to educate, empower law enforcement agencies, security agencies. And I have a background in public service. I come from the Bundeskriminalamt, the Federal Criminal Police Office in Germany. I worked there around 7 years and a half. And now, last year, I joined Chainalysis. All right, back to you.
Great, thank you. BKR wasn't those the people who sold the 50,000 Bitcoin?
Yeah, it rings a bell.
But we will talk about that in a short while. My name is Philip Hartmannsgruber. As you see, I'm not longer associated with the Blockchain Bundesverband, the Bundesblock, where I was board member until today. And today we announced that we will found the Bitcoin Bundesverband, so a German Bitcoin association, which will represent the interests of the German Bitcoin companies. And yeah, before that, I was board member of the Bundesblock, and I have a background in a lot of different financial institutions, leading the digital assets and DLT topics. And the last 2 weeks, I was in Turkey on holiday, and I got a lot of calls or messages from different journalists about the 50,000 Bitcoin sale by the BKA or by the prosecutors of Dresden in Saxony. And I answered as good as my know-how regarding this was, but I'm really happy that I'm now moderating this panel and get the different insights from a research perspective, from a lawyer perspective, from a, I don't know, Bitcoin maximalist and author perspective, and from Chainalysis as like, I would say the company who is able to see where the Bitcoin flows. And with this short introduction, my first question goes to Mark. Mark, what happened? Like, what was the case with the 50,000 Bitcoin?
Yeah. So the police in Saxony actually seized these 50,000 Bitcoin from an illegal streaming platform. It's called movie2k.to. And then they did an emergency sale, actually. They got a Bitcoin, I think it was January this year, and they made this emergency sale because they have to, because there is a law in Germany, if you have an asset which is very volatile, like Bitcoin, for example, which can lose more than 10%, and the government has to sell this asset as soon as possible to secure the price or the worth of the asset. And that's what they did, actually. And you have to think about it. They raised 2.39 billion euros. It's the highest seized illegal money they ever got in Germany. And I actually did some calls and asked why, because I wrote an article in a very big German newspaper about this emergency sale. And I think it will be, it will age like milk, actually, because I think it was the dumbest decision they ever did. Because in my sixth book, I made a recommendation for the German government to put Bitcoin in the reserve, like gold or like obligations or like yields. But they didn't, so they sold them. And it's incredible because they actually closed this streaming platform already in 2013. But the owner of the platform, he escaped, and I think they catched him 2019, and now he sent the Bitcoin to the government of Saxony, and they had to sell them. And they did it really poorly, actually, because it wasn't professional. I think they had problems with the lawyers as well as with the company they worked together with. But that's the whole story. And unfortunately, they're all sold now. And now the government of Saxony has over 2 billion euros. And we all know this money will not be wise invested. So that's the story behind the 50,000 Bitcoins in Germany.
Thank you, Mark. We will make a deep dive in everything you said, not everything, but most of it. And the first question I have to Svenja is, what I publicly wrote is that I don't see that they had to sell the Bitcoin. If I'm not a lawyer, I read the law and it says they can. It's a maybe law. It's not you have to. So in my point of view, they said, yeah, there's the law, we had to sell the Bitcoin. And from my personal point of view, I think that's not true. But maybe you can shed a bit of light on this whole legal issue. Why did they sell it, and on which law did they reference?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Mark already summarized it pretty well, but I'm happy to give a little bit more insight. So under German law here, the procedure is called the Code of Criminal Procedure, and it sets the legal framework for these so-called emergency sales. And under this law, the public prosecution office is allowed to sell objects that have been seized in criminal proceedings under certain conditions. And in this case here in Dresden, the public prosecution office argued that these seized Bitcoins may suffer a significant loss in value in the future, and that therefore the sale is necessary to protect said assets. And also in general, a loss in value is usually significant if it amounts to 10% or more. And I think we all know that Bitcoin is very, very volatile. So here these 10%, the possibility of a loss of value is obviously given. The objective of this law is to preserve the economic value of the seized assets, and also to enable an effective management of the assets until the court passes its final judgments. And because of this high volatility here, the public prosecution office did have to consider this emergency sale. However, it should be noted that if they decide to sell Bitcoins, it should be also, the sale itself should be market friendly. So here we speak about large quantities of tokens, and therefore they did carry it out in several tranches, because here obviously the main objective should also be to avoid unintentional price manipulation. Should we also talk about the decision that they made? So if it's a must, or do we want to proceed with
Yes,
it?
please.
Okay. So generally, under the German law, the public prosecution office has a discretion. So they have a say in if they really want to sell it or not. And there are no rigid limits or generalized arguments. So as I already said, we have these 10% loss of value. And with the Bitcoin, because of its high volatility, we always have this possibility of a loss of value. So here the public prosecution office must decide if it really wants to sell these Bitcoins. And this decision must be made in accordance with the so-called principle of proportionality. And here with Bitcoin, the discretion might actually likely be reduced because the legal framework is intended not to maximize the value of the seized asset, but only to protect its current value. And also maybe another argument, not just to protect current value, but also the prosecution office can be subject to claims arising from public liability. So if they did not carry out this emergency sale, even though it would have been indicated, and if when proper discretion would have been exercised, then they might actually or be liable. So if in fact the price of Bitcoin decline in the future, there is a possibility that the public liability should also be considered here in this case. So in conclusion, yes, the law does give discretion to the public prosecution office, but because of the very high volatility here and because of the intention to just not to maximize its value, but just to protect the assets, it's always obviously a decision depending on the individual case. And here, without having obviously all of the information, the prosecution office did act most likely according to law because of this reduced discretion.
Okay, understood. So the answer is they could do it like they did. It's the law, but they didn't have to do it like this.
May I comment?
Because they could have said, no, okay, we wait. Because they waited from January to today. So they waited a time. And maybe they didn't actually time it really, but they could change their behavior. The thing what you said is that if the Bitcoin price would go down 50% in the next month, and they wouldn't have sold today, then they were liable for this 50%. But if Bitcoin goes up 50%, they are not liable, and they could have earned the taxpayer 1 billion more.
Yeah, so there are no set schedules. So the public prosecution office is able to sell the assets throughout the whole criminal proceedings. However, once they know that this loss of a value is imminent, they need to make a decision. And here with Bitcoin, it is imminent right when they seize these assets. So the decision about selling it should be made pretty early in the whole criminal proceedings. And so here, that is actually what they did. They did it after, I don't know, you said 6 months, which you could say is quite slow, but I'm afraid that's just the amount of time the public prosecution office needs for this kind of decision.
Okay, so the timing was just like, it took 6 months time that they actually sold because they have to work with OTC desks and other parties together. Sally, you wanted to say something. I want just to add something what a Bitcoin maximalist would say about the 10% decrease of value, because we have such a high inflation that the euro inflates by 10%. So we should sell euro then for gold, for example, with this law.
That's not so obvious, right? The decrease in purchasing power, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's legal tender, so it doesn't matter. But just something to think about, maybe. Sally?
If I may jump in, I'm also not a lawyer, but we talk to prosecutors every day. And the decision how to process criminal funds and also cryptocurrencies is a highly debated topic right now in Germany. And there are prosecutors that, like mentioned, use the emergency sale round because it's also easier because you don't have the responsibility if the rates go up and down. But we also talk to prosecutors who are opposed to that say, no, our legal opinion is that it's not correct to sell it right away, and they wait for it. And if you guys remember, there was a case in 2021 where in Cologne, Bitcoin were actually sold off an auction, of a public auction. So there's precedent both ways. And I believe until the higher courts make a final decision or the legislator comes up with a final decision for that, it will probably be like a back and forth discussion under prosecutors. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the insights. We usually don't have. And sure, it makes sense that those are different people with different opinions, and maybe if it wouldn't have been Dresden but another city, maybe they would have decided differently. And I think the interesting part is Saxony maybe gets now nearly 3 billion, but it's depending on the outcome of the court of the decision, because they could still say, yeah, not all of the money goes to Saxony. Some money goes to the movie representatives which have legal rights, etc. Or maybe some Bitcoin will go back to the guy who is in jail now. So we don't know that. The next question will go to Andre, and it's regarding the method they used to sell those Bitcoin. Maybe you could give an insight, like what did they use? How did they sell those 50,000 Bitcoin? Because it's huge, it's unprecedented in Germany to sell 50,000 Bitcoin in such a short time frame.
Yes, very good question. I think Svenja has touched on it a bit already. So what the German government did with these approximately 50,000 Bitcoins was they didn't sell it all at once, because obviously this would have created a huge market impact, right? So what they did was they started selling on the 19th of June, so mid-June, they started selling, and they started selling in tranches. On some days, they started selling a couple hundred of Bitcoins. On other days, they sold around a couple of thousand Bitcoins, but they sold in tranches, right? And it took until the 12th of July until they completed these sales. So it took almost a whole month, right, to complete those sales. But regarding OTC versus exchanges, I think they used both, right? They used, I think, flow traders for their OTC trades over the counter. And they used exchanges. I think they used Bitfinex, Coinbase, and others, and Kraken for their exchange sales. But I think the market impact is the same, because ultimately market makers like flow traders that trade OTC, they will use these Bitcoins and they will ultimately send it to an exchange to liquidate them. You know, they hold certain inventories, Bitcoin, right? But above these kind of inventories that they need for liquidity, they will sell everything in excess of this kind of inventory. So ultimately, if they receive such a huge supply, for instance, from the German government, they will send it to an exchange anyway, and this will create this kind of selling pressure on exchanges, right? And we've seen this. I mean, we can talk about the market impact as well, but yeah.
That's what I would like to ask Sally first, because my thesis was that the BKA first sold Bitcoin through 3 exchanges, Bitstamp, Kraken, and Coinbase. Then I had the feeling there was a huge outcry on Twitter, X, because of those methods. And then they got the Bitcoin back to their wallet and sent it then to Flow Trader and other OTC desks. Is this true, or did they use OTC desks from the beginning?
Yeah. I dug into the on-chain information we have at our hands, and it seems like the answer is yes and no. What we see is the BKA supported the authorities in Saxony to conduct these sales, and this is public information, they made use of the firm Bankhaus Scheich, which actually received the funds and then executed the liquidation themselves. So when we talk about the BKA or the state of Saxony sold, it is on their behalf, but the BKA didn't actually sell anything. When we look at
that's very interesting, because I've never read that on Twitter or X, because always was it like BKA moves this and there and that. And now we know that Banca Scharich is involved because of the statement. But for me, it's new information that they were like BKA not involved at all. They gave like 50,000 Bitcoin to Banca Scharich, and then Banca Scharich executed.
Yeah, it is mentioned in the press statements by the Saxony prosecutor's office. And yeah, so it sounds better if people say like the BKA sold. I think that's the reason. If we look at the on-chain information we have, we see that actually 7 different WESPs were involved. So they tried to diversify a little bit. And we look at the first day of selling the cryptos, we see that the first day was, on the first day, already OTC trading platforms were involved. So we cannot say that they first interacted with Coinbase and other exchanges and then changed their minds. They had their first test transactions already to B2, C2, for example. So in total, it was B2, C2, it was Floor Traders, Cumberland was mentioned, Coinbase, Kraken, Bitstamp, and one other exchange that I didn't see publicly, so I cannot disclose who that is. But it was diversified, and most of it went to the OTC platforms.
Were really over 90% of the trades OTC sales, like the press statement said?
I tried to crunch the numbers, and it actually seems like that is true. So around 87% of it went to WESPs that we consider OTC trading platforms. The problem with that is other exchanges that you, for example, mentioned, also offer OTC desks. So even if we see money flowing to exchanges, which we consider exchanges, they might have been using their OTC desk. So the number could be even higher. My gut feeling is if they say more than 90%, that is probably true. And we can, with our data, can say that at least 87% of it went directly to OTC desks.
Very interesting. So yeah, 90% is okay. If they say over 90, that's fine. And I think that's a good, what you just described tells everyone that everything on the Bitcoin blockchain is transparent. So it's really, really, really hard that someone can like do anonymous illegal transactions, which is a huge topic still, that people are saying, yeah, Bitcoin is used for criminal activities. Sure, it is, like maybe 0.1% is your number, I think, Chainalysis.
3-4%. 0.34.
3-4,
Yeah.
okay. And compared to cash and deposits, which is like maybe 3%, much higher. So a really interesting topic, I think. And next question goes to Mark, because we talked a bit about the impact, and they tried to have no impact at all, which is nearly impossible with 50,000 Bitcoin if you sell it in, I don't know, what was it, 3 weeks, something like this. A pretty short time frame for up to $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. And if we look at 2 dates, that's the 4th of July. That's a national holiday in the US. And usually there's not much trading there. And then we have the 8th of July with a huge Bitcoin sale of 16,300 Bitcoin. So from my point of view, it's not optimal to either trade on a holiday in the US and to trade 60,300 Bitcoin in 1 day. What is your take on that? And maybe if you have, Andre, maybe then like information what the actual impact was, I'm happy to.
Yeah, the Bitcoin market is a very tight market, actually. So with a couple of millions, you can move the price. And you see it on the chart, because when the BKA started selling the Bitcoins, the price was above $65,000. and it went down $10,000 in this period of time they were selling. And mentioning the 4th of July, the holiday, you see the price dropped significantly from 62 to I think 56,000. So it was 6,000 drop on one day, because the main market is still the US, and the US was closed. So that was not very optimal, like you already said. And the same on the day when you sell 16,000 Bitcoin on an exchange, even over BTC, has a significant impact on the market and on the price. And I recently talked to Michael Saylor, and he's buying crazy all the time. We know that he owns over 200,000 Bitcoin, and he tries not to hurt himself. So he tries to do small tranches of Bitcoin buying over OTC with different companies. So he's not pushing the price too far, too high, so he doesn't hurt himself. So I think the Bankhaus Scheich didn't do a good job. So if they would have been clever, or if they would be experienced, or if they had a consultant who's experienced in the Bitcoin space, everybody would have told them, okay, don't sell them on a bank holiday in the US, and don't sell too many on one day, because it's a really tight market. You know, there are only a couple of 100,000 Bitcoins on the exchanges, and if you sell OTC, it's even less. So that's had an impact on the price, but we saw the market digested it very well. So on the long run, I think. Andre, you not agree with me? I see that.
Yeah. So 50,000 sounds like a lot, but like in fact, across all exchanges, not only the ones they've used, right? Across all exchanges, you have around 3.2 million coins, right? So a bit more than this. According to Glassnode data, I mean, there are different data providers. There's like CryptoQuant, but according to Glassnode data, which is probably the gold standard among on-chain data, 3.2 million.
I doubt it.
Just look it up.
3.2 million Bitcoins on an exchanges.
And that being said, I think what the market generally doesn't like, and why you have such a huge market impact, is whale exchange inflows. And the German government was such a whale, because whales are defined as network entities that control more than 1,000 Bitcoins, right? And obviously, if you control 50,000, you control more than 1,000. So you're considered a whale. So everybody was watching these kind of wallet addresses and how they transfer to OTC desk and to exchanges, right? Exchange wallets. And the reason why they don't like is, for instance, if you consider the market impact of normal aggregate exchange inflows, it's around, for 1% in exchange supply, right? In terms of Bitcoin, you get like a 0.31 percentage points decrease in price, right? But for the same amount from whales, which is the same Bitcoins, but they just come from whale wallets, right? Large holders. The impact is almost 5 times as large, the price impact. It's around 0.32% from these whale wallets. And so during this week where we had this increase in exchange supply, also selling from other entities, for instance, short-term holders, not only large long-term holders, but like whales that hold short-term, we saw an increase in exchange supply, around 8% increase. And this usually creates selling pressure because it increases exchange liquidity. And so there's much less, there's more pressure on the price, more downside pressure. And these inflows usually indicate selling, right? Which is why the market reacts bearish. But yeah, long story short, it had such a huge market impact because it came from a whale wallet. And we know, like from the data itself, that these whale exchange transfers usually have a large price impact, larger than usual exchange transfers.
Yeah. I think the day they sold so many Bitcoin, the price decreased 7%. I don't think that's a coincidence with what you just explained. And I'm sure that your number is right with the 3 million Bitcoin, but they are not sold this day. They are sitting there for 1 year, 5 years, because people are still not intelligent enough to move those Bitcoin to a private wallet, to a self-custody wallet, because we had so many topics like Mt. Gox. That's another topic, by the way, with the price impact. We have the FTX situation. I don't want to talk about other exchanges, but you should always be sure not to have a lot of money in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies on an exchange. Just a personal remark.
I think, I think the huge price impact, you mentioned this 7% drop, right? And $6,000 drop, Mark. I think there was one story, which was the German government selling Bitcoins, right? But on the other hand, you saw also large whales, but short-term holders, which are mostly crypto hedge funds, they also sold into this price drop. They've actually capitulated. What we see on-chain is essentially, and maybe Sally, you can add some color on this, but like what we saw into this dip, into this price correction was large holders, short-term holders that hold less than 155 days, less than half a year. They realized most losses since year to date in 2024. So they've essentially thrown in the towel the moment like the German government accelerated these sales, right? And they've also thrown in the towel. We've seen other kind of on-chain data like there's a metric called short-term holder spend output profit ratio. And what this measures is so the coins being spent relative to their cost basis, right, by short-term holders. And what happened to this metric was it reached the lowest level since November 2023 when FTX collapsed, right? So there was huge capitulation in the market. So it's not only the German government sales, but also other entities, whales, large holders that sold. We saw crypto hedge funds. They de-risked the most since 4 years. They went completely like, they de-risked their portfolios, underweight Bitcoin and so on. But I think like there was such a confluence of bearish factors that implied what I refer to as seller exhaustion. Seller exhaustion means at the end of the day, if you have nobody that's selling anymore, right, you usually have some kind of tactical bottom. And I think it's quite likely that we saw this during this capitulation of these whales, German government sales. We saw this kind of seller exhaustion. So I think it's rather a positive signal.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions left. We have 15 minutes, circa. If you have any questions, please just put it in the chat. Maybe Mark or Sally. What are considered best practices in the management and disposal of large volumes of seized digital assets, and how might these mitigate the potential of market disruptions? So, in other words, if there is another entity which gets a lot of Bitcoin, how should they sell it?
Don't do it, but Sally, you can answer the question.
Yeah, maybe let me go first. I mean, I cannot really comment on market movements. That's not my area of expertise. I can say from a investigator's perspective and ex-law enforcement, I can say that this will probably be a lesson learned for the law enforcement community. They will probably take into consideration these types of reactions. It is always hard because I don't believe that this was an expected case. In Germany, we had large seizures of crypto in the past, which were like in the hundreds of millions. We had Hydro Market, we had Wall Street Market, we had huge sales also on different kinds of markets. And I think prosecutors' offices and asset recovery officers need to take this into consideration, and they are working on best practices right now. I believe that these types of discussions will not come up in the future because I believe these occurrences are very rare in the first place. And I mean, in the end, people learn from experiences, and I believe that they might even stretch like the time frame of sales, maybe even more to make the impact even less. But it's very hard because there is no strict standard on how law enforcement and prosecutors need to do an emergency sale. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there are offices that do auctions, for example. But then there are other problems that occur. For example, if you auction off Bitcoins and people pay, for example, a very over the rate price for your Bitcoins, people think of like, why do people want to pay like 50% extra for seized Bitcoins? And then there are other AML types of discussions going on. So there's no best way. And I think it's like a trial and error. And I think in the future, we will be in a better position.
Let me add, my first advice would be to work together with professionals. So there are enough entities, companies, services in the Bitcoin space who can support professional institutions like the BKA or the government of Saxony. And the second advice would be...
Stop, Mark. Banco Scheich is a well-known player which already sold Bitcoin. So I think they have expertise.
But they didn't do a good job. I think we all agree on that. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't very professional. You can't sell on a holiday, on a bank holiday in the US. Everybody knows that the US is still the biggest market for Bitcoin. And you see the impact on the 4th of July. So that's why I before this happened, I would say, yes, okay, they're perhaps professional, but they proved they're not. So that's why I would advise there are better companies, perhaps not from Germany, but from other countries, which they could work together with. So that's just an advice. They don't have to take it, you know. But I think it was stupid to sell on the 4th of July. That's it. Yeah, that's my opinion. And the second advice would be sell 80 or 90%. Okay, I'm fine with it, but please keep 10 or 20% in a fund or something for the people of Germany. Please, for God's sake. That's
like the Aktienrente.
Exactly. Please. That's why we have to educate them. That's why the Bitcoin Bundesverband is so important to educate the people in the Bundestag.
Andre, Svenja, do you want to add something?
Yeah, ladies first.
Yeah, as Sally mentioned, there aren't any best practices yet. And from a legal point of view, selling the Bitcoin is definitely a safe option because in the end, the public prosecutor has to make this decision about the emergency sale. And I mean, at least during law school and our education, we don't learn anything or we aren't educated about cryptocurrencies. So public prosecutor is maybe not able or not educated enough or doesn't have the sufficient training to make such a decision for maximizing the value of the seized assets. So it is definitely a safe way for them to just try to secure just the value that the Bitcoin or the seized asset has at the moment. So from this point of view, I can understand the public prosecutor's office, but as Mark also mentioned, it might be a good idea to maybe open the discussion there and just inform people and also law enforcement about possibilities.
Yes, so I personally think that, I mean, they had their guidelines, right? It was at the end of the day, was like, I just did my job type of event, right? They just sold it because they had to. But I think we have to quickly establish a kind of public discussion in the Bundestag, also committees, to introduce Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, right? Or some kind of public pension scheme, right? Because we know Bitcoin has been one of the best performing assets, right? It has been the best performing major asset, better than equities, bonds, and so on. It is volatile, but where there's volatility, there's growth, right? And we know there's lots of positive skew in the return performance and so on. Yeah, I mean, Trump is about to announce, quite likely, his plans to include Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset in the US, right, on the 27th, when he holds his speech at the Bitcoin conference. I mean, it's not like above 50% likelihood, but still, I think there are some markets, betting markets, that imply like a 30% probability But still, we have senators in the US, like Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming. She's publicly advocating for Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset in the US. And I think we should not be, maybe we shouldn't be like the first mover, but at least a fast follower, you know.
So my last question is kind of answered, but maybe before we go into the last question and then a question from the audience, let's do a guessing game. Some of you may know that the BKA wallet was emptied because they sold the 50,000 Bitcoin and then regained Bitcoin because people just sent Bitcoin to the BKA wallet or to Banco Scheich, as we know. What do you think Banco Scheich or BKA will do now with those Bitcoin, especially, okay, I don't want to say the names they put in their public key, which is possible to have a specific public key which say different things, but some were coming from a CoinJoin account, so maybe mixed with dirty Bitcoins. What do you think, just a personal opinion, will happen with those Bitcoin? Burned or I don't know?
They will sell it, make money. Socialists always need money.
But it's not much, right? It's just $413.
So
it's what I'm seeing right now.
not much, no.
No, it's not that much.
I also do not have a strong opinion. It's I also believe like 400 euros or something. This happens often with big police operations where addresses get public. People just dust the address or send in money with vanity addresses to advertise and or just out of curiosity. I mean, I don't know. I do not know the legal perspective. I believe that if you send your coin somewhere, you're giving up your custody. So I believe it's up to the recipient. I don't know if it is the Banco Scheich in this case to use the money however they want. Because in this case, the money is not tied to the case. So the money is not still belonging to the defendant. Because all the money that the state of Saxony sold right now, if the defendant gets acquitted or because of some reason, he has the right to get his money back, right? So if the money comes from other sources, it's up to them. I would just say, like, sell it. It's just $400, but no strong opinion.
Yes, I agree with Sally. So I think these payments could be considered as like a donation, and then it's up to the government to decide about it. I mean, it should be regulated under administrative law, which I'm not an expert on, so I don't know for sure, but they could probably also use the money to reimbursement for their debts of the government, or they just keep it because they don't want to sell it. That's just speculation.
Okay, thank you. So last question. And yeah, the question is pretty easy. In your personal opinion, what should the prosecutor's office of Dresden have done? Should they have sold the Bitcoin like they did, or hodl? And do you think Germany should invest in Bitcoin as a reserve currency, as now the talks is in the US, like Trump maybe will announce? And Jana Kotar from Bitcoin im Bundestag, she wrote about this to our finance minister and chancellor, that we should get a Bitcoin strategy and maybe best practice about those cells. And last sentence, I think that is why it's really important to have the Bitcoin Bundesverband to do lobbying, but education, because education is key everywhere. That's highly important to educate politicians and those people who are making the decisions in that regard, but up to you.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake selling them, and I would advise to build a strategic reserve in Bitcoin, like other countries will do too, like El Salvador or perhaps soon the US, because it's the scariest asset in the world. And I think the country which is the first who has a strategic reserve will be important for the future and will have a golden or an orange future for their citizens. So as sooner they would start it, the better it would be.
Final words.
Yeah, just want to mention, agree with Mark 100%. And maybe, I mean, we all know that the pension system as it is right now in Germany is not sustainable, right? There are approaches to do a capital-based pension system, right, based on equities, but it might be a good idea to consider Bitcoin as well. So my opinion is they shouldn't have sold it, right? They should have transferred it to the finance ministry and they should have hodled it 100%.
It won't age well, and we already see there's one website where you can see where the price is right now, and they already missed like 300 million euros of gains actually, and will be more in the future because we know the price will go higher or the euro will devalue. That's it.
Yeah, maybe just for final words. I mean, the hands are tied for the prosecutors and for the investigators in this case. So what I would like is that the ministries or the legislator set transparent rules for everybody. So not every time that police seize money, they don't get into these types of discussions. And then if the rules are transparent and they can be however the public wants, they can use that money. I would like it to go back to police agencies so they can be equipped better, have the necessary training. But yeah, that's maybe just my final words.
Yes, I can only agree with Sally. So as we mentioned, selling the Bitcoin was most likely legal, and their hands there were kind of tied. Here, obviously, education is the way to move forward, not only for law enforcement, but also for the government and probably the public in general. So when it comes to reserve currency in Bitcoin, it has opportunities, but it also has risks. So it's a weighted discussion, and but there are definitely options that could be the way forward. And yeah, I think the Bitcoin Bundesverband and all the other Verbände out there, it is a good step in the future just to keep people informed and educated.
Great, thank you very much. And there are different people with great podcasts. I have my own, and others are really, really good since a lot of years. Thank you all for being part here on the panel. I think it was a great discussion. I personally learned a lot, and I was really deep down in a rabbit hole to the whole sale. I just want to answer the question in the chat that I think, yes, it was intransparent what the government did or the prosecutor's office did, but I think that was intentionally because they didn't want to move the market. If they said, hey, we are selling now 50,000 Bitcoin, this would actually move the market. Maybe they thought, maybe we don't get caught and we can do it like no one is watching. But I think that in the future, they will do it the same way. They will not announce, yeah, we are selling this kind of Bitcoin in that time frame. That just to answer the question. And thanks to all. Thank you to Frankfurt School Blockchain Center for the opportunity. I think it was a really, really interesting discusussion. If you have any questions in the audience, I think you can reach us on all the social media accounts, LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, via email, etc. Thank you, and have a good evening or afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.